Hello to all you gorgeous creeps out there, and greetings, my fellow ghouls, goblins, and ghosts. I bid you all welcome, the living and the dead, to my catacombs of creepiness. My name is Purga-Tori, the Queen of Samhain, the Halloween Queen herself, if you will. Here in my catacombs of creepiness, we talk all things horror, big or small. So if you're just as big of a horror fan as I am, be sure to smash that like button down below, turn on all notifications, and hit subscribe. Be sure to follow me on all social media platforms. That's Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram at PurgatoriHorror. And if you wish to support my content further, be sure to sign up or donate to the official Purgatory Horror Patreon, and I'll put the link to that in the description below. There you will find written horror reviews, short stories, horror poetry, exclusive photos and behind-the-scenes stuff, my horror art, and much, much more I cannot mention here. Anyways, enough talking your heads off, although severed heads are pretty cool. It's time to get into today's horror topic, and it's a bit of a divisive one. The King of Samhain and I were just chilling in our cozy little crypt one evening and decided to try out the entire Resident Evil film franchise. We watched every film, and I know a lot of horror fans didn't, but we loved every minute of every one. I was actually a big fan of the 1996 game when I was a child, and even though the films aren't exactly like the games, I found them to be fun little horror action films that are fun if you think about them being in an alternate universe, if you catch my drift. There are 6 films in the entire franchise, with one reboot that was released in 2021 called Resident Evil Welcome to Raccoon City, but I'll do a separate video on that one in the near future. The entire series was both written and directed by Paul W.S. Anderson and starred Mila Jovovich. I think that's how I pronounce her name. I'm so sorry if I butcher that completely. I'm terrible with names. As the leading star. The first film in the franchise, Resident Evil 2002, takes us to the beginning of the zombie outbreak. The outbreak begins underground, underneath a deserted mansion in Raccoon City, in a place called The Hive, operated by Umbrella Corporation, which was the largest commercial entity in the entire world. They had another secret too. They experimented with viral weaponry. In The Hive, scientists experimented with the T-virus, but when someone sneaks into the lab and drops, or tosses, if you will, one of the vials, breaking it, the virus becomes airborne, traveling through the ventilation systems of the Hive. This, of course, infects everyone. That's when the Hive's artificial intelligence, the Red Queen, goes homicidal and kills everyone in the lab to try and contain the infection. I guess she's not all bad, right? Right? The only problem? Because of the T-virus, they didn't stay dead. They came back to life as zombies hungry for blood and human flesh. Tasty. And infection can be spread with a bite or a scratch. Alice, Mila's character, awakens inside the deserted mansion with amnesia. There's someone else in the mansion with her, though. An environmentalist, Matt, who's posing as a cop, who knew about Umbrella Corp's infamous T-virus and wanted to take them down. He was in there with her. Alice actually awakens naked in the bottom of a shower, not knowing who the hell she was, or where the hell she was for that matter. That's amnesia for you. She gets dressed, and that's when soldiers who work for Umbrella Corporation crash through the windows and swarm both Alice and Matt. They are both forced to go with them underneath the ground down to the Hive to help shut off the Red Queen. Little did they know that when they do shut off the Red Queen, all the doors of the facility would open and flesh-eating zombies would be released to attack them. A group of 3 of the Umbrella soldiers go into this hallway that leads into the Red Queen's lair to try to get the door open to the lair, and she turns on a failsafe to keep them from getting in, which is a laser that can slice through humans cleanly, and this kills all 3 of the soldiers. Slices one's head off, slices one down the middle in half, and slices the leader into cubes, and they all just fall dead. When one of the soldiers is able to get the Red Queen's defenses down, Alice and one of the soldiers are able to go into the lair and shut her down. That's when zombies are let loose. And she kind of even warns them, please, I'm begging you, you don't know that she's warning them at first, but you can kind of gather that, especially after she says the infamous line, "You're all going to die down here." Now Alice, Matt, and Alice's fake husband Spence, who also had amnesia that was found in the tunnels leading to the hive as they were coming in, Rain and a few other soldiers have to fight off zombies and try to escape before they are enclosed inside the hive forever with zombies with no escape. They do, however, find a cure, the antivirus, which they steal, but it turns out that Alice's fake husband, he betrays them and tries to take it for himself. He actually was the one who broke the vial to begin with at the beginning, letting the virus loose. I think he was trying to steal a sample of it to sell on the black market. But Spence ends up getting his karma, and they do end up acquiring the antivirus. Rain, the other Umbrella soldier who was with them, is actually bitten 3 times. So when they try to administer the antivirus into her, it doesn't take because of how infected she was and how long she's been infected for. Not to mention they have mutated creatures that the lab experimented on with the T-virus attacking them, like big ass creatures with these long ass tongues. I think in the game they were called lickers, if I'm not mistaken. Long story short, Alice and Matt are the only ones who make it out alive, and when they get back up to the surface to the mansion, they realize Matt is scratched by the creature that was after them, and he's being mutated by the T-virus. Alice tries to administer the antivirus into Matt's arm to try to cure the infection, but before she can do this, at the end of the film, Umbrella agents arrive and take them into custody, saying they were going to put Matt in the Nemesis program, that he was infected, and they wanted Alice to be taken to the Raccoon City facility, which I guess is the Raccoon City Hospital, to have blood tests and all this stuff done to her. But in reality, they actually experiment on her and inject her with copious amounts of the T-virus, which binds to her cells, turning her into a badass. She wakes up in an operating room at the end of the film, and she finds that the hospital is desolate. There's no staff around, and it's completely vacant. She walks outside and notices everything has gone to complete and utter chaos. There's even a newspaper clipping hanging on one of the cars that said, "The dead walk." The dead now walk the earth. They were released from the hive by officials who decided it was a good idea to go back down there to open it up and see what went on. You know that whole saying, curiosity killed the cat? Yeah, that definitely applies here. Dumb idea. Dumb idea. This leads into the sequel, Resident Evil Apocalypse, where it shows how quickly the T-virus spreads throughout Raccoon City, turning people into mutant creatures and zombies. In this one, after Alice escapes from the Raccoon City Hospital, after the experiments, she's strong, can fight better, do all these tricks, etc. She's a complete and utter badass now. I mean, she was a badass before, but now she is just 100-fold. Just, amped up badass. In this one, she teams up with Jill Valentine, who's a major character in the games, a STARS agent, a reporter, a former Umbrella officer named Carlos, and a civilian named LJ to find the creator of the T-virus's daughter and return her to him safely. Yes, the creator of the T-virus and also one of the leading scientists of Umbrella. But he didn't create the T-virus to cause destruction. He created it to try and heal his daughter's ailments, since she was wheelchair bound since she was really, really little. It turns out that this T-virus can regenerate dead cells and even heal them if kept in check with the antivirus. Or it can cause horrible mutation. It could go either way. And of course, zombies, as we've seen, which is what unfortunately happened to the entirety of Raccoon City and eventually the world. They also find out that they have to get out of Raccoon City by morning because it is about to be destroyed to try and cleanse it from T-virus infection. Even though in the first film it said it can't be destroyed, but, Umbrella doesn't think. Now they have two missions. Find the little girl and get the hell out of the city. Dr. Ashford, the creator of the T-virus, promises a helicopter to them if they return his daughter safely to him, which they do successfully. But of course not without a few problems. I mean, what's a disaster without a few more problems? Even though Nemesis, aka mutated Matt from the previous film, is on the prowl and ready to kill, they are able to return the girl back to her father and locate the helicopter. But one of the head crooked Umbrella agents take everyone at gunpoint, forcing Alice to fight Nemesis or he'll shoot everyone dead. To prove he was serious, he actually shot Dr. Ashford in front of his daughter. The guy was a grade A piece of crap. Alice agrees to fight Nemesis, and they do have a hell of a battle. That is, until she realizes it's her friend Matt from the previous film, which is a very emotional moment for her. They stop fighting, and Nemesis actually takes up for Alice and turns on the rest of Umbrella. Now the gang fights through Umbrella agents until each one is dead and they can get into the helicopter safely. Which they do end up doing, but the explosion of the cleansing process, which I mentioned before, aka nuke, causes the helicopter to crash. Alice is killed, but the others somehow survive. Alice is then revived, or a clone is made of her. I'm not sure how that worked, they didn't really explain it, by Umbrella Corporation, but this time she has mind powers, she has healing powers, and she's even more of a badass than she was before. You can almost compare her to Eleven from Stranger Things. She kills most of the doctors and injures Dr. Isaacs, who will become a major villain in later installments, and escapes with Jill, Carlos, Ashford's daughter, and LJ. Fast forward 3 years later since the initial outbreak, and the world is completely taken over by the T-virus. It's a complete wasteland, and zombies are everywhere. Alice had to go off on her own because Umbrella could actually track her down with all the experiments they did on her, which would make it super dangerous for her to be around other people, and she didn't want to endanger the people that she cared about. Carlos and LJ from Resident Evil Apocalypse were now part of a convoy led by Claire Redfield, who's related to Chris Redfield, which is a popular character from the video games. Actually, both characters are in the games, I heard. They're now scavenging the wasteland that is the Earth for resources and just trying to steer clear from the infected. LJ is unfortunately bitten in the beginning of the film, though. He later turns into a zombie, eventually attacked by infected crows that have been feeding on flesh infected with the T-virus. Zombie crows. So cool. We're talking Alfred Hitchcock's The Birds on steroids at this point. Alice finally shows up and explodes the birds with her mind, which is freaking awesome, by the way. I don't care what anybody says. People at this point are a little freaked out by Alice's powers, but they're grateful. Alice tells them about a place in Alaska called Arcadia that is completely free from infection. The only problem is they need gas to get there. And what better place to get gas than the city of Las Vegas, swarming with infected. Not to mention you also have Dr. Isaacs from Umbrella experimenting on zombies underground to try to domesticate them in a way that they won't want to eat people. Much like Day of the Dead, but not as successful. As a result, he ends up creating a super strain of the T-virus in which he keeps injecting into himself to mutate his genes and DNA so he could become a monster. And when Alice faces him at the end, he is now indeed a monster, an indestructible one. When Alice is underground and everyone's dead in the convoy and Carlos ended up sacrificing himself for the greater good, Alice finds all her clones, which Umbrella has been experimenting on since the beginning of the film as well. And one of the clones she woke up helps turn on the lasers, similar to the ones in the first Resident Evil, you know, the ones that diced up everybody? I like to call these the people-cutting lasers. This ends up killing him instantly. Alice thinks it's going to kill her too, but it stops. Before the film ends, Alice sends a message to Umbrella Corporation headquarters in Japan led by Wesker, another popular video game character, saying that she's coming for them and she's bringing a few friends, which are her clones. Now it's a Rick and Morty army of Mortys. I don't know if you guys have seen Rick and Morty and you've seen the army of Mortys. It's that kind of situation by the fourth installment, which is Resident Evil Afterlife. We just finished Resident Evil Extinction. Now we have a superpowered Alice and her clones who arrive in Japan and initiate an attack on the Umbrella headquarters, which that part is freaking cool. Yes, over the top, but so fun, so fun. The real Alice is actually hiding out in Wesker's jet, while the army of clone Alices kill Umbrella Corporation employees and soldiers. Wesker ends up escaping, blowing up the headquarters and the whole city of Tokyo behind him, including the army of Alices. Now it's just regular Alice, but by the time he's in his jet to escape, Alice holds Wesker at gunpoint in the jet, but then he injects her with something that makes her human again, taking away her awesome mind and healing powers. She does thank him for turning her human again, but in this universe, do you want to be that vulnerable? The jet ends up blowing up, but she manages to find an old World War II plane and takes that to Alaska in hopes that Claire and the rest of the survivors from Extinction will be there. The survivors were nowhere to be found when she gets to Alaska, but Claire shows up violent and hostile. She has some sort of android spider thing attached to her chest that Umbrella put on her, which causes your memories to be wiped, basically becoming a pawn of Umbrella, controlled by Umbrella. Alice is able to snatch it off, and she ties Claire up and takes her on the plane where they fly towards Los Angeles. She does end up getting her memories back, but that's later on. When they're in Los Angeles, they encounter a prison full of survivors when they see a big help sign on the roof. When she lands the plane and meets all of the survivors, there's a prisoner there that was still locked up, and he was thought to be a sadistic killer, but he actually wasn't. He was really Chris Redfield, Claire's brother and popular video game character if you played the games. When zombies and other mutant creatures overrun the prison, they break Chris out of his cell because he knows a way out, and they devise a plan to escape. Because as it turns out, Arcadia isn't in Alaska. Arcadia is actually a ship that was just resting in the ocean. Apparently, the frequency that they put out in Extinction saying that it was free of infection and they had food and water, that was apparently still happening, and they were getting it in Los Angeles, and it turned out to be coming from this ship that said Arcadia on it. After battling zombies and mutated creatures with giant meat mallet axes, they make it to Arcadia, only to find it's a trap set up by Wesker and the rest of Umbrella. Wesker is now mutated from the T-virus and is more powerful than ever. Turns out that he has been experimenting on innocent people who have asked for help after receiving the broadcast frequency, and he's been imprisoning them underneath the ship. And as it turns out, I think he's been feeding on them too. I think at least that's what they insinuate. But Alice and company finally defeats him and his zombie dogs and sets the prisoners free. She then puts out a similar broadcast frequency because she wants to live up to the promise that Arcadia, stood for, but it draws Umbrella Corporation right to them. You think they're going to have a happy ending, but you see helicopters and jets swarming towards the ship. They're led by both the artificial intelligence, the Red Queen from the first film, and Jill Valentine, who was apparently taken and corrupted by the same robotic spider that Claire was at the beginning of Afterlife. Which now leads us to Resident Evil Retribution, where all the people are killed on the ship at the beginning except for Claire. She flees and isn't seen again in the film whatsoever. Alice is taken by both Umbrella and Jill Valentine, where she's taken to an underground test facility that had simulations of bigger cities around the world like New York, Tokyo, Raccoon City included, and Moscow, to test the T-virus. Alice is forced to fight through each of these simulated cities alongside Ada Wong, who's another popular video game character, who no longer works for Umbrella Corporation and wants to help Alice escape. And apparently, ironically, Wesker no longer works for them either. Or so he claims. There's also a team who meet up with Alice to help her escape, including another popular game character, Leon, who is also in love with Ada Wong. They're all able to make it out, but it turns out Umbrella has cloned all of the main characters from previous films, like Rain, played by Michelle Rodriguez. She comes back to portray her, and they all go after Alice. Carlos is even cloned, and the entire team from the first Resident Evil is even cloned. Alice even has a daughter that they created that she tries to rescue in the film, which I thought was kind of interesting. Alice ends up defeating Jill at the end and all of the clones, and she's able to rip the spider off of Jill's chest, restoring her back to her old self. At the end of the film, they make it to Washington, D.C. Wesker is inside of the Oval Office at the White House and tells Alice he needs her help to fight a war between good and evil. This, however, and it shouldn't surprise you at all, turns out to be a trap, which brings us to Resident Evil, the final chapter. There was supposed to be a war, but they didn't show it, and yeah, I can understand why that kind of made fans mad a little bit. I mean, a war would have been cool. The war was over, everyone was killed apparently, Wesker betrayed everyone. Shocking? I think not. Alice has a new mission now. The Red Queen, yes, the homicidal one that tried to kill her in retribution, wants her to travel to Raccoon City, back to the hive where it all began, to obtain an airborne antivirus which could stop the outbreak and kill everything infected with the T-virus. This could mean her too, unfortunately. She is also caught up in a race against time because she only has 48 hours to do so, and after 48 hours, both Wesker and Dr. Isaacs will blow up the world. This one has several clones of Dr. Isaacs. One that she's trying to beat to Raccoon City, who's bringing an army of the undead to kill everyone. And then I guess this is the actual Dr. Isaacs, who they awaken, who apparently went into like a cryogenic sleep. It's definitely a weird film. When she gets to Raccoon City, she actually runs into Claire Redfield, apparently she survived, who was with another group of survivors. This movie was good, but I found it odd how they kind of retconned Dr. Ashford's story from Apocalypse. Now, instead of the T-virus being made for Ashford's daughter, it was made by someone else for their daughter who had a health condition that made her age backwards. Now you can correct me if I'm wrong in the comments if they retconned Dr. Ashford or not. I was kind of confused about that, so definitely let me know your thoughts. I am so curious. Like, I don't think the entirety of Apocalypse was retconned, just that little detail. But you can correct me if I'm wrong. Anyway, she succeeds, kills Dr. Isaacs, and obtains the airborne antivirus. Well, I wouldn't say she really kills Dr. Isaacs. Dr. Isaacs' clone kills Dr. Isaacs. It's very, very funny. She also finds out that, and I thought this was so interesting, and spoiler alert if you haven't seen these, Alice is actually a clone of the little girl with the degenerative condition that made her age backwards, and that the Red Queen was actually modeled after the child that she was. So Alice was a clone of the Red Queen, or the Red Queen was made in Alice's image. It's very cool, but very weird and very like mind-blowing. She even ends up meeting the real her, who was 25 and had the body of an elderly woman at this point and was wheelchair bound, and was also played by Mila, just in like lots of like old people makeup. It was a really weird but very interesting twist. Isaacs died, Wesker was killed, and her and Claire make it to the surface where she releases the airborne antivirus. As hordes of zombies are running towards Alice, they all fall dead after the vial is broken. Alice fell down too, but she didn't die. Turns out that the antivirus just killed the T-virus within her body. Now Alice was infection-free. Now that I explained everything away, here are my final thoughts on the franchise. other people may disagree, but I loved every film in the franchise. Each one of them had something fun and unique about them. And I totally understand they are not for everyone, and a lot of people may think they are ridiculous and that Alice is overhyped or overpowered, but I love her, and I love how fun and action-packed the films are. They just make me so happy. I can't explain it. Both me and my fiance love, and bond over these films. They're just fun. No more, no less. They're just fun. What can I say? It's a perfect combination of both horror and action and a little bit of sci-fi, which I really dig. Plus, it's just fun watching Alice be a badass. What can I say? I can't help it. But if I had to say if I had a least favorite in the franchise, I'd probably say it's Retribution, since it didn't stand out as much as the other ones, but yeah, I love them all. I love them all for different reasons. What can I say? My favorite has to be the first one though. Hands down. I just love it. The soundtrack, the music score, just, oh my god, it's just amazing. Well, anyway, that just about does it, creeps. Be sure to give me a like and subscribe. Hit the little bell so you never miss when I post a video, which is weekly. Be sure to follow me on all social media platforms. That's Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram at PurgatoriHorror. If you wish to support my content further, then be sure to sign up or donate to the official Purgatory Horror Patreon. And again, I'll put the link to that in the description below. It has so much exclusive content you won't want to miss. And to my current patrons, I just want to say thank you so much. Thank you. I appreciate you all more than you know. Anyways, thank you guys so much. I love you. So long and pleasant screams.